Hold on, everybody. It's going to make me log in on the chat. I hate it when it does this. It's going to make me go through about 9-10 rounds of verification most of the time. Hey, hot dog, it actually worked this time. Usually there's a whole lot of, like, spot the stuff. You know how it is. Alright, there we go. Time for me to pour some drinks. Hey, Jeannie. Hey, Mona. Hey, everybody.
To a half-hour rhythm by Benny Goodman and his orchestra, the Raja Rhythm, playing for you from the Joseph Urban Room of the Congress Hotel in downtown Chicago. Dodging a Divorcee, the first number. Benny Goodman and his orchestra.
Hey, everybody, just making a very stiff drink. Be right back. Alright, and we are off. Hey, Christy. Hey, Kathleen in the euphonium section. Hey, Lisa. Hey, all. Go to the side here. Hey, Julianne. Hey, Leah. Hey, Pat. Hey, everybody. Thanks for all of the housewarming gifts today. I wasn't expecting that until next week. Hey, Emily. Alright, well, I was planning on just showing you some details of the new place, but since you've all been so generous, maybe at the end of this tour I'll show it off. You get a preview from where I'm sitting here. This is just the couch edition. Hey, Miles, come on over, Miles. You know what this music means. Hey, Heather, getting back to something like a normal schedule now. Hey, Wolfie. Hey, Florecita. Hey, everybody. I've got a different on-air sign coming. Do you see this one over here? It says on-air. I've got another one coming that'll work a little better for this. Plus, a matching one that says doorbell. I really want to rig it up so when somebody hits me on the buzzer, it makes the doorbell light come on. I'm not sure how well that'll work. Hey, Chris. Hey, Diane. Hey, Luca. Yeah, Miles, I brought Miles here yesterday. He spent the first several hours just hiding under the bed. Then about 2 o'clock in the morning, he decided to hop up and cuddle and purr. And then went off to explore, and that's what he's been doing ever since. He's just been running up and jumping on things. Exploring everything. Miles, that's the same liquor cabinet as before. Miles, stay out of the liquor cabinet. Sorry, I gotta go deal with Miles in the liquor cabinet. Hey, everybody. Yeah, that Miles. Always after my booze. Lights turn blue when the mail is delivered. How do you rig that up? Huh. You have to like have a wire straight from the mailbox. One thing I did rig up is if I make the buzzer's ringtone, when somebody hits me on the buzzer, it goes to my cell phone. If I make that ringtone a specific tone, I can train the smart home thing to recognize that sound and turn on the light. Maybe. But I gotta have it loud enough, you know. In that case, why do I need the light on? Octavio, I did not really consider this the housewarming party. I thought that would be next week when I do the Rogers Park tour. But enough people have been sending me housewarming gifts today that I guess it is. I guess that at the end of the regular tour, I will move over to studio lighting, I guess. Now, Cindy, the other cats didn't come with me. Miles is by himself so far, but he'll go back there when I go out of town. He's gonna go back and visit. Miles, hop up. Come here, Miles. Miles will make an appearance by the end of the tour. It's in the contract after all. Hey, Grandma Bell. Yeah, the brick is not real. The brick was added at a great difficulty. It's foam, but it looks great. And dig these, I'm gonna show you this thing that I got. This record player, these are coasters, but it's a mini record player with drink-themed Bob Dylan songs. This is awesome, I love this. Down to the font.
Benny Goodman and his orchestra, and the next tune, Sandman.
Hey, Kitty. Hey, everybody. Starting with a Manhattan tonight, but I'll just keep on going. Well, Miles is... Well, here, we'll make sure Miles honors the contract really quick here. Miles, there you are. Hey, Karen. Well, yeah, it's been a couple of solid weeks of putting together furniture, rearranging pictures. I'm not anywhere near done yet, but I'm in sight. The place is functional now. Hey, Sue. There's always just something else to work on. Wait till you see the 80s room. With a light strip that can be timed, that like goes along with music, which, you know, that's not a hard ad, but it just seems like a little too much. I'll show you the proper reveal of what the new background will be like shortly. For now, you're actually getting a little bit of different stuff. Hey, Donna in Texas, Tejas. I'm already drunk. Hey, Subway J. Welcome along, Subway J. I was thinking of using a Subway theme in my new bathroom. Like at the mosaic that says 86th Street. Or more likely like a CTA Morse sign. I'm right by the Morse stop now. I'm digging it here in Rogers Park. There's a jazz club in walking distance. There's a social club that sometimes also has jazz music in walking distance. Oh yeah, Swedish Chef is in my kitchen. Vicky, I'm not sure what Miles thinks about being the only cat so far. He seems to be enjoying himself enough. He just dragged a Jump Mouse, the toy, over here. But he's just sitting over on the floor watching the proceedings. Oh, Sue, that's the worst.
Benny Goodman Goodman is playing for you from
Yeah, I've
the
never
Joseph
owned a
Urban
home
Room of the
before.
Congress
It's
Hotel
interesting.
in downtown Chicago, and his next tune, Lights Out.
Very interesting. There is some Chicago memorabilia visible behind me. There's a doorknob from the Lexington Hotel. It kind of blends in with the wall from here. Matchbooks from the Stratosphere Club and Mr. Kelly's right behind me. Very small, but they're there. Also some Bruce Goff stuff. Autographed photo of Sally Rand. Hey, Cindy. Hey, Mags. Welcome along. This is Benny Goodman coming to you live from the Congress Hotel in downtown Chicago back in 35. Now this one's early 36. This has been his first broadcast in 36. And then I thought about if we need another kitten, that's on the table. But I don't know, he may be enough trouble. But I added a lot of shelves and things specifically to make sure he could get up to high places. Make sure he had ledges to sit on, shelves to get on top of, places to jump, and he's found most of them already. Only the really high one that goes up to the door. Hey, congrats to Cassidy. Luca learning to tap dance. Excellent. Go, Luca. I had a chance to see Savion Glover tap dance when I lived in Atlanta, but I couldn't make it. And Miles did the cat thing of just hiding for a while when he first got here. But after that, he's been trotting around like, ooh, what's in here? What's up here? Can I sit on this? He's been in all of the windows. There's good ledges in all of the windows. We'll see if he needs a new kitten here. This place is not as large as the old one. 2 was the correct number of cats in the old one, but we ended up with 3. These things happen. Oh, wow, I am way over time to start here, so let's hear, okay. We will pause the Benny. I'm using a different Benny show than usual, so I kind of miss it. But all right, welcome along, everybody. Here's a quick preview of some of the new digs. You'll get a better view of it later. You know, I need to wipe this thing down a little. Maybe I can just use this. Probably got sawdust all over it. All right, welcome along, everybody. I'm Adam from Mysterious Chicago Tours, coming to you from my couch. Usually I'm standing upright. You can see my whole living room set up, Zoom room in the background. Don't quite have that going right now because I didn't intend for this to be the proper housewarming party, but we are in the new Mysterious Chicago headquarters tonight. I didn't have time to put together a proper new tour, so we're just going to be doing a new a virtual tour that just doesn't happen to be that popular. Then we're going to talk about relics from the Old City Cemetery today. This is all free. Kick it at what you like. I didn't intend this to be the housewarming party, but people have been, you wonderful Mysterians have been sending me housewarming gifts all day, and I guess it's up to me to show it to you. So stick around at the end of the tour. I'll put the laptop up where it's normally supposed to go and put what I've got presently for the lighting. And we'll see. This has been a very busy couple of weeks for me. First-time homeowner. I've been working on, what theme should the bedroom be? What theme should the kitchen be? Do I have enough power strips? No, I do not have enough power strips. Building furniture, throwing away bags and bags and bags of styrofoam that comes with the unassembled furniture. It's an ADHD nightmare, honestly. I realized, I needed a hammer to do this. By the time I get to the hammer, I found 5 other things to do instead. So, yeah, I've managed to do some research. I've gotten absolutely obsessed with this house on Lunt. I'm driving past it every chance I get. You might have seen it on yesterday's morning mini tour. Right after that, we talked about this. This was an old miser who lived on Lunt Avenue. He was said that he was worth about $200,000 a year, but managed to keep his family housed and fed on about $1 a week. His wife filed for separate maintenance, then died a few days later of pneumonia. But it was found that her soup that she had been eating had enough strychnine to kill 25 people. Now, she died in the hospital. There's no way she could have eaten that much strychnine and still managed to get as far as the hospital. The general sense was maybe it was poison to frame her ex-husband. Who knows? But the house is not only still there, it looks like nobody's been in there for years. I understand somebody does live in it, but I was taking some shots of it, so people walked up like, taking pictures of the haunted house, are ya? Like, Really? Is it? I would love it if that place were haunted. It looks haunted. The neighbors definitely like to joke about it being haunted. Whether it is in fact properly haunted, that's a whole other thing. The guy's wife died in the hospital, not in the house, but it still looks like nobody's been there in a long time. There's even a graveyard of rusted automobiles out by the side of it. So welcome along, everybody. Anyway, I'm Adam from a Mysterious Chicago Tour. Today we're going to talk about relics of the old city cemetery that can still be seen around the city. Now, let's just start out here with some of the background. This is a churchyard. Now, cemeteries are really a very new concept. People have been burying the dead since like the Neanderthals, but having a nice big garden space like you might see in, say, Mount Auburn Cemetery in Massachusetts, or Graceland Cemetery here in Chicago, or in Brooklyn at Greenwood Cemetery. This is a very new concept that only dates to about the middle of the 19th century. Before that, most people who died in urban areas were buried in churchyards that got really overcrowded really quickly. There was a terrific book in the 1830s called Gatherings from Graveyards that covered all of the conditions of London churchyards, like St. George's Church. Burial grounds and vaults excessively crowded. Or ground and vaults. Burying ground crowded with dead, fees very low. Schoolroom for children over a shed for tools. Burial ground very full. Resting place of John Bunyan, 100,000 bodies deposited Bun Hill Fields, which was called Bone Hill Fields. Observations of the gravedigger. 4 burial grounds involved. Poor ground extremely crowded with dead. House in immediate vicinity occupied by a butcher. His disgusting contact. This is just the table of contents. Bodies exhumed and deposited in the slaughterhouse. Long overcharged with management of a peculiar kind at this place at Spa Fields. Impossibility of explaining it. Don't you just want to read this book? Gatherings from Graveyards is actually a sanitary commission's report. Now, Chicago was no different than other cities. They just put aside little spaces. They didn't know quite how big of an area they were going to need to bury the dead. But Chicago started to grow right around the same time that people got into the idea of garden cemeteries, places that wouldn't be so crowded. So Chicago initially decided to put some stuff. So here's the main downtown area. If you look right about where it says 875 North Michigan, just right there, that's about where the water tower is. That was the first place that they put a burial ground here in Chicago, right on the lake. And I just found an article from the 1830s talking about how the sandy graveyard wasn't really working. It was right on some sand dunes. This is before they had re-landscaped the whole area. And it said, how does this make us look? When ships sail into the port of Chicago, the first thing they see is these sand dunes with coffins sticking out of the sand. This was a comically bad place for a cemetery. It only lasted a couple of years in the 1830s. At the same time, they had another about where it says South Loop down there, just a little bit south of that. That would have been about where McCormick Center is now, or a little bit west of McCormick Center, right about here on Prairie Avenue, right about where the new DePaul basketball arena is, which incidentally has remarkably good acoustics for a basketball arena. Now, there are also many other cemeteries around the city. For instance, many other old lost ones. There was one right where the Merchandise Mart is now. Very little is known about this, but a couple of old-timers in the late 1800s said, I bet you young people would be surprised to know there were graves right where that train station is. This is before there was a Merchandise Mart there. There was the old Kinsey Street train station, which comes up in some of my lectures now and then. It's the first place Frank Lloyd Wright would have been in Chicago. But right here, there were at least a couple of graves that's very poorly documented. But for years here in Chicago, we had a woman named Helen Sclair. She was known as the Cemetery Lady. She is now buried very near the Pilgrim statue at St. Boniface Cemetery. Helen is St. Clair, the cemetery lady and advocate for the dead. That's her grave at St. Boniface. She actually lived in St. Boniface Cemetery. They had a little house for her that she was able to live in rent-free. But according to her, there are about 60 abandoned cemeteries around Chicago. that she knew of. There are 60 or 70 places that have just been built over the years. Many of these are just small family plots, but others were proper cemeteries, like the one where the water tower is now. Incidentally, just take another drink. One night on a ghost tour I was running, we had this kind of weird girl who was kind of like wandering around like she was in a daze. You know, red-headed, long hair. I wrote this into the book, Just Kill Me. She kind of seemed like she was in a daze the whole time, just wandering around with this appropriate sense of wonder. And then at a certain point, she said, I have to get off right here. Can I just get off right here? And she got off the bus and kind of disappeared into the crowd. That was right at the water tower, right where the old cemetery was. It's just like a Resurrection Mary story where she disappears right at the gates of the cemetery. So, in any case, Chicago decided, okay, these old churchyards are disgusting. These little ones on the water aren't really sufficient for a growing city. We have got to get a proper cemetery around here. So they put one right where Lincoln Park is now. This was just known as the city cemetery, or often just the cemetery. Issues would come up like they needed a dead house. The morgue. Our city is greatly in need of a proper place in which to keep the dead bodies found in the streets and byways of the city. Almost every week a corpse is found, and no proper, decent, or safe place is provided for its reception. That is an issue. The cost of a proper building or vault will be very little, and it is so much needed we hope the council will not neglect to immediately provide one. Well, they did. They put one in the old city cemetery, but then during the Great Chicago Fire, the dead house actually exploded, but was still in use really quite a long time after city cemetery stopped being used. By the 1860s, this was being still so close to the ground, people would talk about it as a sandy, neglected place. When a windstorm came through, it would open up, the coffins would come right to the surface, and the wind would blow them right open. You could see right inside. But even long after they closed it down and started using the paupers fields out in Jefferson Park and moving all the bodies to Graceland and Rose Hill in the 1870s, they were still using the dead house for quite a while. There's only a couple of images of what this old city cemetery was like. One of them is this illustration from Harper's Weekly, which may or may not actually be drawn from life. It may just be what somebody imagined it was like on the night of the Great Chicago Fire. The Great Chicago Fire started down in the South Loop area, about where one of those 1830s burial grounds was, a little west, then burned its way all the way up north about to Lincoln Park, which had become Lincoln Park by then, but was still basically the old city cemetery. They were just in the early process of moving everybody to Graceland or Rose Hill. It would still be full steam ahead on moving bodies up until for a couple more years after this. A lot of the famous burials at Graceland Cemetery had not been moved from the old city cemetery until 1873. So this is an artist's rendition of what it looked like when so many people came to shelter in the old city cemetery. And it's about as close as we get to it. There was an excellent article that went around, A Graveyard on Fire. Flames shot up from the resting places of the dead and the living creatures. Let me do this in a Vincent Price voice. And the living creatures, I've lost my place, screaming with horror, made for a moment the ghastliest spectacle that ever fell upon living eyes. The receiving vault, solidly built and shrouded in foliage, that's the dead house, fell under the terrific flame, and the dead burst from their coffins as the fire tore through the walls of the frightful charnel house. And whosoever should be found without the soul for getting down would stand to face the hounds of hell and rot inside a corpse's shell. In the broad light of today, the place is the most ghastly I ever saw, not even Cold Harbor exceeding it in awful suggestiveness. Above the graves, charred stones stand grim sentinels to the dead, the funk of 40,000 years. No more memorials of anything but disaster. Every inscription has disappeared, and even the dead are robbed by the flames. And though you fight to stay alive, your body starts to shiver, for no mere mortal can resist the evil of the Thriller. All my new neighbors are gonna just love me. Alright, so if you want to know more about the Old City Cemetery, check out Hidden Truths, a website by Pamela Banos. She did her doctoral dissertation on the Old City Cemetery. The website is hiddentruth.northwestern.edu, and that covers pretty much all we knew about it at the time. Some more has come out since the time when she did this research. I know the state archives at Northern Illinois University have found some more stuff that they keep wanting to show me, and I keep missing the emails. It's one of those things. It's one of those like misconnections in Craigslist or the old New York Herald in the 1860s. You know how it is. Only it's not like I would be reading the New York Herald in the 1860s. Hey, Miles. Copperhead crap. All right, so there are some relics of the Old City Cemetery still standing. That's what we are going to be covering here. This is the couch tomb at the south end of Lincoln Park. I was out there to film for some TV thing one Halloween, and it happened to be very, very foggy that day. So I stuck around and got all the footage I could just for things like this. This is the tomb of a guy by the name of Ira Couch. He was a hotel owner here in Chicago. He ran a place called the Tremont House. Abraham Lincoln spoke there. Senator Douglas died there. John Wilkes Booth stayed there. Not all at the same time, but in that exact order. It was not a part of the Lincoln-Douglas debates exactly. There wasn't a Lincoln-Douglas debate in Chicago. But Douglas spoke there one day, then Lincoln spoke from the same balcony the next day. And they all used pretty much the same talking points and in the same year. This is kind of like an after show, like one of the Lollapalooza or Riot Fest after shows that artists do. It was like that. Anyway, this is the couch tomb designed by James Van Osdol, Chicago's first major architect, built in 1857 when Ira Couch died in Cuba, but not actually completed until 1858, which means most likely Mr. Couch himself would have been interred in a Fisk metallic burial case. They were all the rage in 1858. They were about the only thing that would preserve you long enough that you could be easily moved from an original burial to a mausoleum after it was finally built. This was stone taken from Lockport, New York. It weighed something like 50 tons, cost something like $7,000 in 1850s money. This was like if you worked at Marshall Fields or something, you were making. This was like 50 years' salary to you. So when City Cemetery was closed, the Couch Mausoleum was never moved. There are lots of theories as to why. There's a story that James Couch threatened to sue. There's a story that somebody thought that they ought to leave one mausoleum there just as a reminder that this was once a burying ground. Or there was some story that it was just going to cost too much to move the thing. Probably closest to the latter. Moving a mausoleum and having it be intact costs an awful lot of money. But I can kind of imagine, the city council meeting saying, so you hear how much it's going to cost to move that thing? Yeah, and Jim Couch is threatening to sue. That's all I need, Jim Couch on my ass. Well, this guy says we should leave something there as a memorial. Let's just plant some trees around it. If anybody asks, it's a memorial. That's it. So even very early on, by the end of the 1800s, there were already articles about the mysteries of the Couch tomb. Nobody knew who all was in there. Ira himself was there, presumably his parents, and it looks like a couple of babies who died in childbirth. But it's just been sitting there for a long time. I used to take tour groups out there, and I would have dreams almost nightly for a while about getting inside of this place. One time I went inside, and I was on the set of The Office. Another time there was a tunnel that led right to the old Chicago History Museum right nearby. Dream after dream of going inside of this place. Then I noticed one day there was a crack under the door about the size of one's pinky finger. So using some really high-tech equipment, the Tomb Snooper 500, I was able to get some footage of what is behind the door. This really made me king of the hill for a while there. Here's some of that footage. See, it was a dark and rainy night. That's the ground. Then there's the door, and under the crack, we see another door with what appears to be a slightly more ornate doorknob. We got past level 1, but not past level 2. Should we ever manage to open that door, I guarantee you there's going to be some little dude that looks like strawberry shortcake saying, "Thank you, Mario, but our princess is in another castle." Is that something kids today know about? That every kid thought that looked like strawberry shortcake at the end of 1-1 in Super Mario Brothers? Now we know that it's toad, but at the time everybody thought it was supposed to be strawberry shortcake. Also, incidentally, the sour grapes doll, one of the villains, she looks. If you get a version of this lots of dress, she's got like boots that go all the way up to her ass. In any case, though, well, just recently that kind of made me king of the hill for a while. But a while ago, they realized that people have been tomb snooping this thing, and also that it could probably be broken open without too much trouble, so they got a couple of guys to come remove and replace the door and reinforce the door, which means that they had to actually properly open the thing. I was not there that day. They didn't tell me about it, but they were nice enough to send me some pictures, so we now have a fairly clear picture of the inside of this thing. And it turns out there's actually a built-in lock all made out of stone. They didn't try to open the thing. They didn't think they possibly could anymore. Even as of the 1890s, they weren't sure they could open this thing without dynamite, which is still probably the case now. But there we are. There is a better view of the doorknob right here. Let me make this bigger. Of course, you can get all of these pictures on the Patreon. How much bigger can I make this thing? This much bigger. It doesn't look as much like a doorknob in this view. It just kind of looks like some chunk of, stuff. What do you want to be when you grow up? Tomb Snooper! All right, so that wasn't the only vault that was left behind. There was also the vault of Elijah Peacock, who was a jeweler. Peacock jewelry was still a very big thing in Chicago for a long time, and the Peacock Vault was still there in the city cemetery for a very long time. I think that this is the one that a bear got stuck in from the Lincoln Park Zoo. Animals used to escape from the Lincoln Park Zoo all the time. One time, a bear got loose and ended up stuck in one of the old mausoleums. I think this one. You ever try to get a bear out of a mausoleum? Apparently, it's very difficult. But something they don't tell you when you start zookeeping is how difficult it is to get a bear out of a mausoleum. Probably went in there to hibernate. But the peacocks were eventually moved to a burial plot at Oakwood Cemetery. You can see some of the markers here. Rebecca Peacock, Josephine, William. A lot of people dying in 1850, which wasn't even a really bad cholera year or anything. Rebecca would have been 29 years old. The other two were teenagers in 10 and 11. I don't know why so many of them died in the same year. Also, their dates are out of order here. They got Rebecca, then Josephine, then William, which aren't really in the same order. Presumably, I'm going to guess this was the same disease. Probably, I'm going to say tuberculosis. They each got tuberculosis from each other. But there are some drawings of what this looked like. It was one of those graves that is built into a hill. One of those, what they called a tumulus. The plural is tumuli. These tumulus vaults would go right into a hill. There's still a couple of them at Graceland Cemetery. They look really cool, but structurally, very bad idea. They require a lot of really extensive maintenance, and if somebody presents you with a six-figure bill for restoring your great-great-great-grandfather's mausoleum, you gonna do it? No, you are not. All right, my show is so awesome, says Paula. That's awesome. Katie says that was my thought. Probably also means, the same thing. There are also quite a number of people we know are buried in the Old City Cemetery but never moved. It is estimated sometimes that about 10,000 bodies never got moved, which is probably about right. Honestly, by the time they started moving the bodies, this is a very wet, marshy soil. Bodies don't tend to last in these things. So a lot of times, even the ones that they moved in 1873, I gotta wonder what the hell was even left to move. Probably just like nails and a couple of stray bones. But this is David Kenison. It's a memorial boulder set up to David Kenison. David Kenison told everybody he was not only a Revolutionary War veteran, but the last surviving participant of the Boston Tea Party. This made him famous around Chicago. He charged people money to come look at him in a museum. Even though he was absolutely exaggerating his age, he was not, in fact, anywhere near 115 years old. I kind of suspect people of Chicago must have known that. But they liked having a Revolutionary War veteran in town, so they went along with it. Furthermore, he was good friends with, what's that one guy's name? You know who I mean. I've covered him in many other tours. Couple more drinks. He had a mansion. It wasn't Ferd Peck. It was some other Ferd. Anyway, anytime you see this guy's name, you know it's probably going to be a made-up story. He was always... Damn, what is that guy's name? He's at Oakwood Cemetery, anyway. Totally spacing. I'm going to do that a little bit on nights when I haven't really had a chance to go back through. No, it wasn't H.H. Holmes. Martin, did they have a 100 and older discount at Denny's? I would think Bob Evans would be more the case for that. I was at a Bob Evans a while ago in Ohio, and there was a guy in a World War II veteran hat. Dude looked like Yoda. But still up and ambulatory and on his own, so I gotta say, man, thanks for your service. Anyway, David Kenison, I would say the same thing to, because he did fight in the War of 1812. But in the War of 1812, he said he was about 40 years old. Then a couple of years later, there's another record where he said he was 60 years old. A couple of years after that, he was suddenly 90 years old. This guy managed to age a lot faster than most people, or he was just lying about stuff. But years after the old city cemetery was moved, there started being letters to the editor saying, hey, isn't it look bad that we never moved the body of David Kenison? This makes us look unpatriotic. We're not unpatriotic. We should do something about this. So they got together, the old guy, Ferd Turgelson, Fernando Jones, Octavio, got it. I knew it was a fur something. So Fernando Jones and some other guys got together and said, okay, we remember the funeral. It was a big deal. Probably, we think they buried him right here. Records indicate that they were way off. This is probably just where they stopped off during the funerals. Nobody actually attended a burial in those days. This was still pretty close to the era of churchyards where every turn of the shovel was going to turn up something that nobody wanted to see. So they put their heads together, decided, this is about the place, put up this memorial boulder. There's actually also a thing of tea leaves at the Chicago History Museum that they say that he said were from the old Boston Tea Party itself. But they came from Fernando Jones, so never listen to anything Fernando Jones says too long. But there is a rumor that some of the old graves from the old city cemetery ended up at Graceland in things such as the rubble wall or lining the pond. And clearly some of the gravestones here, some of the stones here are old gravestones. But this is somebody born 1897, clearly way too late to have been from the old city cemetery. More likely they just, now and then, somebody gets a new gravestone or somebody gets moved away, and they are left with these things that are just rubble. You can see this quite a bit all over the place. Old gravestones do come up. Gravestones are sometimes no longer needed, and sometimes they do turn up in like ripraps. Like, I believe Elizabeth Keckley, who was the dressmaker for the Lincolns, a freed enslaved person. Her gravestone is in a riprap someplace, like a rock wall. But right over here at the end, you can see this is the grave of Captain George Wellington Streeter, the Pirate King of Chicago. But back behind it, you might have noticed this rubble wall. We'll spin again. This wall of rubble that is kind of falling apart. I believe it was Lindsay Curry who pointed this one out to me. But among the wall, if you look really closely, you can see that some of these were old gravestones, like this one that says, "Asleep in Jesus." Which is always a very weird epitaph to me. Weird stuff. So, moving back a little ways in history in the 1810s, Fernando Jones, talking about him, the founder of the Chicago Title Organization, the founder of a lot of Chicago's foundational myths, was occasionally known to claim that he was the guy in the canoe in one of the early pictures of Chicago, when it consisted of Fort Dearborn and Jean Lalim's old house, which by then was John Kinsey's house. John Kinsey was the guy considered the founder of Chicago for many years. He was one of the first non-native settlers. But he is up here at Graceland Cemetery with some War of 1812 insignia that I would not have added. He may have committed some light treason. The Kinsey family lot has an awful lot of people that are just known as Kinsey. We've got John Kinsey himself. We've got John H. Kinsey Jr., who died in 1862. Most of the time you see a picture of John Kinsey, it's really John H. Kinsey Jr. Alexander Walcott, his son-in-law, Chicago's first doctor. Then a whole bunch of people just called Kinsey. These are most likely infants. You can see John H. Kinsey up there died in 1865, but John Kinsey himself died 1828. About more than 30 years before Graceland Cemetery was founded. So this is, in fact, John Kinsey's fourth grave. He was buried in a family plot. Then he was buried by where the water tower is now. Then he was buried in Lincoln Park, where Lincoln Park is now. Then eventually, in the 1870s, you can see the date here. Well, 1865, they moved him, along with several other Kinsey family members, up to this new Kinsey family plot. I did actually find some Kinsey genealogy that would probably fill in who some of these other people were that are just known as Kinsey. There are dozens of people in this plot. But this is his fourth burial ground, probably similar for a few of the others around there. There are probably other people with at least 4 burial places around Graceland Cemetery, but this is the one that we know of for sure. Let's look at some other things. Around Graceland and Rose Hill, you can see a number of graves that are moved from the Old City Cemetery, or people that were moved from the Old City Cemetery. Up here we got the plot of Isaac Newton Arnold, a lawyer, abolitionist, and Abraham Lincoln biographer. Congressman elected in the same blue wave that put Lincoln in office. It was a Republican wave, but Republicans were the progressives back then. This is all very basic stuff. So this is Isaac Newton Arnold. Here's a coyote walking past that. Once again, Patreon every week. We post coyote photographs. Robert Lorsel got some great pictures of the coyote pups. I'm very jealous of him. Have to go out there tomorrow for Find a Grave Friday. But here's Isaac Newton Arnold himself. He never got a selfie with Lincoln himself properly, I guess, so he had to pose with a bust of him later on. But the Arnold lot contains several people who were moved there in 1873 from the Old City Cemetery. You can see up above there. Catherine, Harriet, Lizzie, his various children. If you look at the life expectancy back then, the life expectancy seems very low. Recently, I posted a video about Lady Savage Butts, my favorite name of anybody ever. She's buried at Nashville City Cemetery. And somebody marked in the comments, like, wow, she lived until her late 50s, even way back then. And she died in like the 1940s or something. I don't remember for sure because I've been drinking the night. Because people lived to their 80s and 90s back then all the time. The trick was that life expectancy is skewed quite a bit by the fact that so many people didn't make it to the age of 5, or especially until the age of 10. You can see this quite a bit here. Now, unusually here, what makes this one unique is that Isaac Newton Arnold kept a very detailed diary and included an entry for the day that his family members, his first wife and their various children, were moved from the Old City Cemetery. One of whom is back, his first wife probably died in 1839. So she'd been dead for nearly 25 years at this point. And his diary entry is very interesting. He said this was a very painful thing for him to do, but also said that they will sleep just as placidly at Graceland as they do in the Old City Cemetery, which of course was being closed. But also mentioning, how can they not send us a message? Do they know that they're still loved? Do they know that we're still remembered? Why is it that we can't know this? It's a very interesting question. Right across from the Kinsey plot is the Eternal Silence statue. Now, Eternal Silence is usually said to mark the grave of Dexter Graves. It's really Henry, his son. Dexter had been dead, was moved here in 1873, around the same time as the Arnold family members. But in his case, he'd been dead for like 30 years by then. By the time they built that statue, he'd been dead for like 75 years. Let's move over to Roseville Cemetery. There's plenty of relics of the old city cemetery still standing at Rosehill. We'll move along. Oh yeah, Leah, I get a pass for not remembering everything tonight on account of A, this, and B, man, it has been a month. Susan, it's not even Buffalo Trace. I am drinking Clark and Sheffield, Benny's house brand. But this is Frances Pierce Stone. H.O. Stone, her husband, came back to his hometown in New York one day in the 1850s, met Frances, who was 16, brought her home and married her. She died of tuberculosis soon after giving birth to their daughter, who was also called Frances. The baby died a couple of months after that, probably also tuberculosis. But in his grief, H.O. Stone went off to Europe, met a sculptor named Ives, and had him carve this statue, which was really a fairly famous piece in Chicago. There's actually a fairly early photograph of it. This is probably in Rosehill. You can see it's much more legible in those days, and also not yet enclosed in glass. This must be a pretty early picture of it, really, for it to be in that good a shape. But this was almost a tourist attraction. People who were going to Chicago would be told to go check out the statue of Frances Pierce Stone, which at the time was in the Old City Cemetery. Incidentally, this may be the second version of it. There are a couple of newspaper articles from H.O. Stone's lifetime saying that the original was lost at sea. The first one built was being sent over from Europe and the ship sank. So there may be another version of this down at the bottom of the ocean. There's a couple of websites that say reprint a rumor that the original was lost on the Lusitania in the 1910s. That could not have happened. One theory I've heard is that they're mistaking it for the Mr. Stone who died on the Lusitania and is buried at Graceland Cemetery. Possibly. The Lusitania was a ship, mostly a passenger ship, but it was also carrying some war materials sunk by the Germans. Major part of why the United States decided to enter World War I. That's a whole nother story. Let's move on. Elsewhere at Roseville Cemetery, Levy Boone, mayor of Chicago and member of the Know Nothing Party. So called because when asked about their beliefs, they were supposed to say, I know nothing. They were rabidly anti-immigrant, rabidly anti-Catholic, and rabidly anti-Freemason. Which seems weird now. I mean, unless you're super into conspiracy theories. In those days, everybody who was anybody joined the Freemasons. When you got some money, you joined the Masons. It was just what you did. There are still some tree dwellers out there who think those Freemasons are controlling everything through some kind of mysterious conspiracy. But look, my grandfather was a Freemason. If they let that guy in, they ain't nothing special. I'll just tell you that. But this is Levy Boone, who died well late enough that he himself could be buried at Roseville Cemetery. But nearby that plot are some other ones that seem to be even older. Drink a drink till the pink savior of all. A human race. See, here we see some stones just level with the ground that have dates of death about 1845. A whole bunch of people named Smith. Hard to find good data about them. Anytime you find a guy with the name Smith, it's going to be a little bit hard to find it unless they have like a really weird name, like Rudiger Smith. Probably only so many Rudigers out there. Some of these you can't even really read, but that looks like 1830s right there. That's before the Old City Cemetery even. These were probably taken from an old family plot, but they may have been moved, like John Kinsey, first to the cemetery over by where the water tower is now, or where the merchandise mart is now, or McCormick, or the DePaul basketball arena is now. This one died 1839. Once again, very old markers. Also at Rosehill, now and then you'll see ones like this. The really old ones tend to be in the laid into the ground nowadays, which makes them easy to lose. Like around here we've got, this is at Roseville Cemetery, this guy from 1856. Now one thing we don't know is whether this marker itself was moved from the Old City Cemetery. This may have been an actual feature in the Old City Cemetery in Lincoln Park. It's certainly dated a few years before. But sometimes when they moved a body, they would just give them a new marker, and there's generally not going to be any record to indicate which of those is the case. For instance, back at Graceland Cemetery, filmed on this lovely rainy day, is Daniel Elston, namesake of Elston Avenue. Ran an orchard over about where the Life's Too Short used to be. Daniel Elston died a few years before Graceland Cemetery was formed. Whether they actually moved these plots from the Old City Cemetery, or whether they were custom built over the new family plot at Graceland, it's kind of anybody's guess, really. Let's see a few other relics, things that may be from the old cemetery itself. Like William Bentley, this is a grandfather of Arthur Meeker. Arthur Meeker Jr. said, "I'm really not sure." One of Chicago's early queer writers, a travel writer, wrote a great book about Prairie Avenue, had a certain aloof view of it. He was born in the early 20th century. He was part of a generation that grew up on the old Victorian mansions of Prairie Avenue, but thought anything Victorian was just hopelessly old-fashioned and embarrassing. Now, William Bentley, that great-grandfather of his, died in 1849 in one of our big cholera epidemics. We had big cholera epidemics, 1832, 1849, 1854, 1866. Bentley was one of those victims. This is just in too good a shape to have possibly been from the Old City Cemetery. But one of them that may be original is from the other cholera wave, 1849. This is Janette Co, who died in 49. Anytime you see a person at a gravestone with one of those years, it's pretty safe bet that they died of cholera. We had pretty bad cholera epidemics back then. They didn't know how cholera spread. There were things like staying away from flatulence, not eating too many things, not getting too much exercise. Now, not eating too many things did in fact make sense, because the problem was the more things you ate, the more likely you were, more different things you ate, the more likely you were to eat something that was infected with cholera. Basically, cholera is spread by ingesting infected fecal matter. Effectively, you eat shit and die. Probably what happened to Janette Co. Janette Co is married to Dr. M.D. Co, who is over there right next to her. Dr. M.D. Co appears in a couple of news accounts. One of them is in the 1850s. He went to a medical conference, talked about a case he had worked on where a woman was suffering from a disorder where every time somebody touched her abdomen, she would urinate. So he diagnosed it as hysteria, which is very old-fashioned, and cured it, he said, with cannabis, which is a little bit more modern. So a very early advocate of medical marijuana, Dr. M.D. Co., whose first wife, Jeanette, probably died of cholera, 1854. The quarry shop near that was really a part of the Old City Cemetery, was especially known for their angels. Also for doing off-book works building fake giants that came to be known as the Cardiff Giant, but that's a whole other story. I'm feeling no pain, no pain. Just see a couple of other things. 1854 Roseville Cemetery. Can't read a bit of this, but that's probably cholera. Fairly late in the season for cholera. And of course, at Graceland. View from before that sculpture was added next to the LCP Freer. Martin, the Pillsbury Doughboy, did in fact urinate every time somebody touched his abdomen. Why do you think he was going? MD Co. MD. You just see the Ryan Reynolds thing where he imitated Doogie Howser? That was pretty good. But right across from this, I don't know why I don't have better video for this, is Jeremiah Price. There, Jeremiah Price, who was a land speculator in Chicago. One young writer said, in those days I was a young man. I was excited by adventure and romance and dignity, Finding none of those things in Jeremiah Price, I didn't really take any notice of him. The same writer said if that guy had any imagination at all, it did not extend beyond the alphabet and the multiplication table. This land speculator one day went into a pharmacist's office, an apothecary, and said, "I've got quite a diarrhea." And the pharmacist, who I like to assume was Philo Carpenter, said, "Well, Jerry, that's the first sign of cholera. Get to a doctor at once. You must have eaten shit. I don't want you to eat shit and die." But Jeremiah Price said, "No, I'll just take some peppermint lozenges, please." Now, they didn't have really a cure for cholera in those days, so peppermint lozenges weren't the worst thing you could try. At least you'd smell better than all the other corpses. But he died in 1854 during the cholera epidemic there, was eventually moved to Graceland in 1873. Being a miser, with no friends and no family and no real friends and no will, it took more than 20 years to go through his probate and go through his will. But at one point, the judge granted leave to use some of the estate to move his body to the old city cemetery. There's bits of rebar on top that made me suspect there used to be like a whole obelisk thing on top of this, but this is all that's left of Jeremiah Price. And nearby Mr. Price is another guy who died in the same cholera epidemic just up the hill. And the headstones climbed up the hill. I've made a point of using Jeremiah Price on the tours. Anytime there are regulars, they've probably brought peppermints to add on Jeremiah Price's grave. But Jeremiah Price did have some imagination. He was super into grapes. This has come up in more recent research. He was very, very into growing grapes. But this is James H. Collins, a lawyer in Chicago, known as a very fierce abolitionist. Most people agree that if he had lived up until the time of the Civil War, he would have been a general. He usually voted third party. He even ran as a third party candidate on the Liberty Party ticket because he didn't want to vote for somebody who was just anti-slavery, not pure abolitionist. Though this is kind of a weird term. Like, anti-slavery people disagreed with slavery but didn't necessarily advocate for ending it immediately. Abolitionists advocated for ending it immediately. But people we would now classify as anti-slavery almost invariably called themselves abolitionists when they reminisced about it later. These things are a little bit tricky. I sometimes compare it to guns. Even those of us who really can't stand guns don't think that advocating for getting rid of them all immediately is necessarily helpful. It's probably just making things worse. A lot of the biggest anti-slavery people back then thought that people arguing for full abolition immediately were really only making things worse. It's a very complicated politics thing. As soon as you mention slavery, people's tempers got flared up, etc., etc. But anyway, this is James H. Collins. He died in 1854 while arguing in Ottawa, Illinois. Rule number 1, never go to Ottawa. Let's keep on moving on a Sunday afternoon. Hey, Miles, I hear you. This is M.O. Walker. Now, this is about the earliest death date I have found in Graceland Cemetery. James O. Walker died in the 1820s over here, but then Livonia Walker died as a young woman at the age in 1815. I'm going to have to show that again. M.O. Walker was known as one of the stagecoach kings. Graceland lot records do indicate that Janette, who died in 1885, Livonia, died at the age of 4 in 1815, is actually buried here. But M.O. Walker didn't come to Chicago until many years after that. So if she is actually buried there, not only would it have been at least 45 years after her death, but also they must have been carting the body clear across the country. This would have been really, really unusual back then, but records indicate that that's what happened. Sometimes the records, they just write stuff down. You got to remember that. This one looks pretty old. We're going to say that one's for real. 1857. Graceland in a couple of years too early. Similarly, Edward Bettinger at Roseville Cemetery. 1849. September 1849. That's Colorado. I bet $50 on that. Now, a lot of the land at Graceland Cemetery was once the land of Justin Butterfield, a lawyer known for his sarcasm, defended Joseph Smith of the Mormons in court. The guy who was in charge of like the title stuff when I bought this place was all into Joseph. Was an ex-Mormon who was all into bashing Joseph Smith. But Justin Butterfield defended Joseph Smith in court. Butterfield owned this land. He was known as a very sarcastic guy. One time they asked him if he was against this Mexican-American war. He said, well, I dashed my political chances by being against the War of 1812, so since then I have been in favor of all forms of pestilence and stupidity. He died a few years before Graceland was formed. It's part of why Thomas Barber Bryan was able to buy up the land. He was dead. I am a great singer when I mumble. Okay, all of that. Ephraim Morrison. This is one that I very much believe that this particular marker was moved from the old city cemetery. All the dates on it are from beforehand, and it looks very old. You can see a bit of the lot here. Orsemus Morrison was Chicago's first high constable. Captain Edward W. Morrison was known as the Millionless Millionaire after his family cut him off from his fortune. Also said to be the most eloquent blasphemer this side of Brimstone Junction. Big party animal, really easy to con. You could just tell that guy, hey, last night you did $15,000 worth of damage to my tavern, and he didn't remember where he'd been the last night, so what did he know? You can see all the people here that were moved in 1867. But back before, Martha Ann Morrison died in 1844. A good 16 years before Graceland was even formed. A lot of these people moved in 1867. But as late as 1863, 1868, they were still using the old family burial ground in the old city cemetery. Senior Mullen Ogden, who once averted an abolitionist riot by bidding 25 cents for a guy and then freeing him. You can see Henrietta, who died in 1852. This is probably a relic of the old city cemetery right here. Here's a thing that I got labeled as mix. That's another old one. Anyway, everybody, next week we're going to do a proper tour that I'll be reasonably sober for. That'll be Virtual Tales of Rogers Park, Strange Tales of Rogers Park. And we talk a lot about like Vivian Meyer here in Rogers Park, the great photographer. That's just the start. There are so many strange stories about Rogers Park. Always been known as a place for eccentrics here in Chicago. And I am the newest resident. I would sometimes tell people I lived in Rogers Park before. It was really West Rogers Park, but nobody knows where West Ridge is. Actually, I lived in West Ridge. Nearby me, there were signs for East West Ridge, or West Ridge East. And I figure, okay, then I live in West Ridge East. You probably divide North and South West Ridge by your proximity to the park. So I was south of the park, which means I was in Southwest Ridge East. But I was really at the northern end of that, right on the boundary of the park. So really, I was in North-Southwest Ridge East. North, East, West, South, all in the same house. She's so mean, but I don't care. Love her eyes. All right, so we got this box up with the thanks for donations. Give you a quick talk about the stuff up here right above me. It's a painting by Sick Fisher, original art. Playbill for Oh Mary, which I saw starring Betty Gilpin. Absolutely hilarious. I just checked out the script, and the script does not enumerate what song she sings in the Madcap medley at the end. Edward Gorey art, some Jim Henson stamps, cool Dylan and Baez poster reproduction. It's a reproduction, but I did see one of the originals at the Country Hall of Fame in Nashville a few years back. While I was looking at it, the guy next to me said, "Oh, my friend painted that." It was Bobby Neal, was standing right next to me. Ticket stubs for my first Dylan concert and my David Bowie 9 Inch Nails concert, which were on Monday and Wednesday in the same week. Some Stiffs Incorporated stuff, a Dave Brubeck 10-inch record, some more Stiff Sing stuff, another Dylan thing. A Francis, what's her name, record, lesbian body song singer. Matchbooks from Mr. Kelly's and the Stratosphere Club at the top of the Jewelers Building. Myself as a Simpsons character doing Mysterious Chicago. And some art from the book Suzuki Bean, America's Baby Beatnik. Above me, we got Hipster Burt, we got Kermit, we got relics from my old pool table. I had from a Dylan show I saw in Dalton, Georgia, 2001, before it was Marjorie Taylor Greene territory. Dylan's book, a Dylan and Darth Vader. Some Mysterious Chicago stuff, Statler and Waldorf. A really cool framed piece of dinosaur shit. Right there is the Bespin Freeze Chamber section with several frozen Han Solos. Yellow Submarine Lego. The shelf down there with a signed photo of Sally Rand, some Mysterious Chicago stuff, and some other Mysterious Chicago stuff. Then below that's a bunch of, books and shit. And here's Miles walking around back there. I specifically set that up for Miles to walk around on it. And he does. Hey, Miles. How you doing, Miles? Digging the new digs, Miles? All right, thank you all so much. Next week we'll be doing Virtual Tales of Rogers Park. I'll be more sober for that one. But since you have all been so generous with all of the stuff, Alexa, neon on.
Okay.
I'm going to switch to studio lighting, and I'll show you what this place looks like properly. Let me just, try not to pinch my fingers too much as I lower down the thing. See my ticket stuff from a Tom Waits concert over there, and this painting that we always say is Mandy Cripps time traveling, and she's pointing to a picture of a guy's butt, which she'd totally do. Let me just stumble. Over towards space. So here, probably should have knocked that down, whatever that was. This is the new space, everybody. Mysterious Chicago headquarters, Rogers Park. Octavio Ramman and Max Rebo are in the bedroom, which is the 80s room. You gotta see the 80s room. I'll show you a bit of the 80s room. You see just enough of the 80s room. Yeah. Okay, this was Miles got in the window, so. Whoa, this is not as serious as sit in when you're drunk. I haven't tried that yet. Till now. You shouldn't, but also you should, because it's awesome. Kermit, you need to sit better upright than that. I got to put on the Don Quixote statuette my parents had when I was a kid. I didn't know who Don Quixote was. The curtain in the 80s room is an aesthetic known as Outrun, based on the Outrun video game. Amy, we ain't saving this tour. Oh yeah, swinging bachelor pad. Yeah, this is a swinging bachelor pad. You should see the LED lights that I got synced to Purple Rain in the purple room. Purple room, purple room. See, when I bought this place, the bedroom was painted purple. I'm like, okay, it's the purple room. So I had like a Panther and a purple pie man and some grimaces. I already had the grimaces, obviously. And then I had some LED lights. It's the 80s room. It's also the purple room. So it's the purple room, purple room. Hey, Miles. Yeah, Miles knows what it means when I stand by these shelves. These aren't the exact same shelves, but they're the same basic model. I had like the IKEA Kallax 2 and a 1 next to each other to work on. Now I just got a 3. There he goes. There he goes again. Ba-dum, boom, boom, boom. Can you identify the painting to right there? It changes all the time because it's on the television set. Miles is trying to stop the broadcast, wisely so. Genuinely had not intended this to be the unveiling, but so many of you generously sent donations today as housewarming gifts. I said, let's just do it. Let's just show it. It'll be a different on-air sign later. So, yeah, I just got the 3x4 Calyx now. Oh, and the right behind me there's the 1x2. Well, yeah, this is where my shows are going to be from now on. Not sitting. This is the new Mysterious Chicago headquarters. Well, I didn't think it was quite ready, but enough of you sent housewarming gifts. I was going to do this properly with a proper tour that I was going to do reasonably sober. All about strange tales of Rogers Park, talking about people like Haldane Clemenson, the murderer or accused murderer who lived like a block that away. Or Johnny Hewitt, the miser and accused murderer who lived a few blocks that away. No, wait, that away. Spinning and spinning and... Susan, yes, there is a dishwasher. Laundry is in building, but not in unit. For the laundry, you have to knock on Irene's door on Wednesdays between 7 and 9 to get your card added to. Irene is right across from Doreen, who you see for the parking stickers. But I kind of dig that. It's very dorm room vibes altogether, you know. Boom, 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 boom. And yeah, so this is your preview of the new space. Yeah, totals passed for tonight. I will check the post office box eventually. I'm slightly further away now, but it's a Lakeshore Drive down instead of like Western Avenue all the way down. Octavio, yes, this is very much like 1950s Playboy aesthetic for sure. I have often dug that by. Let's get the Benny back on anyway. I'll show you a bit more of the 80s rooms since I'm drunk enough. Where did I get the curtains?
And again,
Bezos Boutique. Got a lot of stuff from the Bezos Boutique.
Alone.
Lampshade there. That blob up above me there, that came with the house. Hey, Miles. I almost never do work sitting down. I usually standing up. You don't seem like a double chin that way, you know. Yeah, I'll show you a bit. I may undo some of the 80s room because it's a little bit too much. The 80s room, there's a Nintendo corner on my old 80s school desk that I got from my actual elementary school. There's Ram Man. There's a new pen that I just got with Kermit in a big suit saying, same as it ever was. Panther because it's purple. Some purple light. Some framed folders, which were my only real exposure to the Memphis-style design in the actual 80s. Some very outrun curtains. More 80s is over here, and these lights actually sync to music too, so if I really want to be extra, that's the only view of my bedroom you're ever gonna get, folks. But it was all purple, so I got a purple pie man. Came with the sour grapes. You can't tell me shit about sour grapes. One of the least memorable villains of 80s intellectual properties. but if whoever had them before lost the outfit, she just looks like she's got boots that go clear up to her butt. This, everybody, is the all-new Mysteria Chicago HQ. Miles is lurking around next to my open backpack wandering into the kitchen. There's a lot of space for him to jump on up here. It's very much built with Miles in mind. Hey, glad you're here too. Any California raisin food? That would be a good idea. I need a proper Skeletor. I don't have a proper Skeletor at present. I got Panthor. Oh, the sideboard over there? Yeah, it goes all the way back to the wall for storage. I spent a lot of time finding a proper sideboard for this place.
And here's another tune that they'll be playing as long as we dance. Stardust.
Gene, yes, very big Century Modern. Now, Sour Grapes, one of the least memorable villains of the 80s cartoons intellectual properties. But you take the... Oh, man, I won't get into it. They have 80s cartoon Skeletors at Target. I should check that out. I'm seldom a day goes by that I'm at a Target and Home Depot and the Dollar Tree right now as I set this place up. But yeah, you can still see the old green chair from before, and the teardrop table next to it is still present. Orange stuff from this cool Chicago map that I got down at Port Over Starboard Home on State Street. And yeah, green chair is there. About the only furniture I took, really. Kristen, you have a Pigs in Space lunchbox? That's awesome. I got a Muppet Babies lunchbox that's in the kitchen. There's also this picture of me holding it in 1987, looked like the coolest motherfucker I ever looked like. My hair's all spiked and wearing a Karate Kid 2 belt buckle, and I got this look like. Yeah, my friend next to me is holding up a Care Bears lunchbox and going like... If you look at a picture of us from the end of first grade, I've got glasses by then, I look like the biggest dork, and he looks all kinds of cool. Christy, yes, I saw the new Spaceballs is coming. Digging that. Yeah, Octavio, gotta find a Skeletor. Probably get one. I overpaid for this. I don't mind saying. But I will show you this rare view. I made a lamp out of the slime pit. I had to get a stinkor for that. The lampshade does not want to stay in place. Echo Slime Pit 20.
I'm not quite sure how to help you with that.
Echo Slime Pit 20.
I'm not quite sure how to help you with that.
You're supposed to just make it dimmer. Alexa, dim the slime pit. Alexa, slime pit 50. Echo, slime pit 50.
I'm not quite sure how to help you with that.
Forget that. Anyway, I took the old Evil Horde slime pit, added some clay to make slime, and then added a lamp on top of it. It's a lamp. It's the 80s room. It was a purple room. What could I do? Purple room, purple room. John, I'm pretty sure your Echo does not attach to anything called slime pit, so it's probably okay. Fair share of He-Man stuff in there, Leah. I mean, He-Man just lends itself to parody so well. That's really what it's all about. I mean, He-Man was designed, they designed the characters and the figures before they came up with a backstory for them. Recently, Kevin Smith made a He-Man series. It was almost like an attempt. Can we make a good He-Man show? The answer is, yeah, kinda. Not really. High and low, hear it everywhere you go, any time of day. Good night, Kirsty. Miles missing his two buddies? I can't tell. Good night, Kristen Sullivan Gray. Welcome along. Those of you still hanging around just to see me making a fool of myself. Conan the Barbarian meets Star Wars, yeah. There's a great Conan the Librarian.
Goodman's Orchestra and the King Porter's Stomp.
I desire these books. So no, it was they can't do that on. You can't do that on television. No more. Reading Rambo will not be seen today because Rambo can't read. Chris's brother's calling from Japan. Gotta go. I get that. Leaving drunk ass me alone. Joanne says, dude, go to bed. Probably wise. Instead, I'm gonna take another sip. This is not like 2 drinks, you know. Octavio, I believe your Conan the Barbarian meets Star Wars was a reference to He-Man. He-Man was originally supposed to be just figures for Conan the Barbarian, but then they found out the movie was going to be rated R. Like, oh crap, we got to fix this. We better make something else. Then they had to come up with a whole new backstory. They had to retcon what they had drawn, what the figures they came up with. Ended up with a completely ridiculous story. Glad you like it, Sarah. Virtual housewarming party, correct. You all know where the donation buttons are. Wait till I tell you all about this miser, John Hewitt. Next week, we'll do a proper tour on that, just getting toasted. And showing my new place off in exchange for money. But it's pretty much set up now. It's just that still every time I cross the room, I find 5 more things I need to do. Like this particular shelf, not as sturdy as I'd like it to be. I got to attach it to the wall better than I presently have. Here's where I stand during these things. Whoa, I'm dizzy now. Yeah. I'm a silly drunk, that's all I can say. Hey to the chat. Thanks to the text that you liked my shirt, or somebody who has my text. Go pour a huge glass of water and drink it before bed, says Marie. Then they made 3 3/4 inch muscular Star Wars action figures. Yeah, those would be the 1997 Power of the Force guys. I got most of the 85 Power of the Force guys over in the sideboard cabinet there. I'm going to sell a few of them, I think. If I told you how much I paid for a mid-condition EV-99, you'd mess yourself. Arm still attached. Legs still straight. It was 1992. I got a pretty good deal. Leah, thanks. If you find a Skeletor, I'm glad to hear that. I need something like that in the 80s purple room. Purple room, purple room. There's also a music room / guest room. I haven't shown you that yet. It's not done. I haven't shown you the kitchen. I don't know what to do about the kitchen. Do we decoupage the cabinets with old village voice acts from the 60s? You know.
Was presented by the Raja Rhythm. Benny Goodman and his orchestra playing for you from the Joseph.
I gotta rewind the Benny Co.
In downtown Chicago.
Benny. I'm gonna keep on rambling here. And I am. This bourbon's delicious. I did want to show off the new place. I wasn't going to show off the new place tonight other than just like a corner of the walls. Sir, yes, it is a condo. Not every unit in this building is a condo. Some people are renting. But I like my neighbors. I like my location. I don't love the parking lot. There's an old guy outside who will talk about the weather to no end. You get him started talking, next thing you know he's saying, now back in 84... I don't remember what the weather was like in 84 exactly. Good night, Tracy. Yeah, I'm a homeowner for the first time in my life at the age of 44. Miles sitting over on the pony wall.
Helen Ward sings once more.
I rigged that up pretty specifically for him to sit on, though, so. Hey, Miles. I gotta rig up your new litter box. I figured since his litter, based on his location, the litter box is in a closet. I didn't think I'd need a covered one, but then he kicks half of the litter out of it. Hey, Jordana. Hey, Kathleen. I'm on the 3rd floor. I never thought I'd be a homeowner, partly because I'm mostly self-employed. I mean, you try to tell a mortgage place that you're self-employed and you only have a couple of W-2s representing a small fraction of your income. Last year was like 1/3 of my income. The year before it was like 10%. The average of those two together is not great. Kathy, yes. Let it fly away. It's a saying, high and low. Hear it everywhere you go. Any time of day. Big Ben rings it, Valley sings it, Whiteman swings it. A lot of people out there didn't become homeowners till their 40s. Well, that's all right. Me neither. Yeah, I talked my way into it. Not the easiest thing to do. Check out this awesome glass. We'll reiterate, we ask for privacy in this difficult time. Those of you who have reached out to Ronnie are really crossing a line. Katie, finally now worth what you paid for it after 06. Ooh.
Benny Goodman's orchestra and the
I'm hoping this will go up. Cynically. Every time I go out around here, there'll be people from like Texas and Florida who come to Chicago. Lynn says, I don't even look 42 now. All right, I'm not 42. I'm a bit older than that. So, all right. Yeah, it is possible, but you tell the people that you've only got like an average of $20,000 a year in W-2s. The mortgage is like, ooh, yeah, that's gonna be a problem. I'm a 1099 kind of guy. What can I say? Works for me. Kathy says, I am just a baby. Well. Oh yeah, the guy I worked with was very good. He was kind of randomly assigned, honestly, but he was very good. But really, this is the house that Mysterious Chicago built. I was able to get this place because of all of you. I thank you so much for that. Now, I've been doing these virtual tours primarily for tips, really entirely for tips, for over 5 years now. And money-wise, I'm not making as many tips as I did during the pandemic when there wasn't a lot of competition. We can go watch Poker Face instead now. Or, go to McDonald's or something. But you have kept me afloat. You have kept me eating. You have kept my lights on. You have helped me get my own place in this tumultuous time. Hey, Hyper Piper, that sounds like a plug. Chris, I will check my P.O. box eventually. It's clear on the other side of town from me now. It used to be I could walk to it, go to my old place. I miss my old place in the West Loop. I could really make some hay out of that now. Susan, this is the new Mysterian Clubhouse. Gilly, I already signed the documents. It's an interesting thing. The guy working for the title company was an ex-Mormon who had some very strong opinions on Joseph Smith. I told him about the 1855 snowbound train. And the guy on board who was one of the first people to be excommunicated from the Mormon church, hanging out with people like Isaac Newton Arnold, aforementioned. He got kicked out of the early Mormon church because he was using his connection to Goat Joseph Smith to pick up chicks. He was caught on the snowbound train of progressive legislators heading back to Springfield to try to appoint an anti-Kansas Nebraska senator. Abraham Lincoln had thrown his hat into the ring after considering himself pretty much done with politics. My mom says, bedtime. Kathleen says, time for a new P.O. box, but I don't know the manager of these places. All right, Benny Goodman is wrapped up. That means it is definitely time for me to wrap up. If my mom is saying it is time for me to wrap up, I better wrap up. But you can see all the buttons here. This has become, I did not intend for this to be the housewarming party. Next week was going to be the housewarming party. Next week we'll be back with an absolutely proper new virtual tour. Today was just based on what I could remember version of the Old City Cemetery tour, one of our lower interest tours. So next week, a brand new virtual tour, Strange Tales of Rogers Park, the new headquarters of Mysterious Chicago. Thanks a lot for joining me, everybody. You ain't getting to see the 80s room ever again, but you got to see it tonight. Thank you for all of the donations. I'm Adam from Mysterious Chicago. And to stay safe, stay strong, and of course, if you can, everybody, do stay spooky. Have a good night, everybody. See you tomorrow for Find a Grave Friday. Probably a Graceland because I want to get pictures of the coyote pups. At least half as good as what